What is it like going through the police academy, and what do you need to learn? What do you need to know about law enforcement procedures, and how can you be successful? Let's discuss. Before we get started, I have a few gifts down in the description for you. One is going to be the Getting Started workshop. It's going to walk you through every phase of the hiring process so that you can get hired on quicker and for the department you want the first time around. There's some hidden bonuses in there as well. Additionally, if you want to jump on a free coaching call with myself or any other instructors and sit down and discuss what steps you need to succeed, not only through the hiring process, but maybe even in the academy, jump on a free coaching call. They're there for us. And the last one is we have a new exam down there to allow you to gauge where you are for the hiring process. Now, just because you score great doesn't mean that you're guaranteed to get hired. Just because you score low doesn't mean that you're not going to get hired. It just gives you a baseline. And then from there, if you want to have some additional conversations, we can do that. Now, what does the police academy look like, or what does learning law enforcement procedures look like? How can it help you? How can it help you through the hiring process? How can it help you through the police academy? And the ways that this work are going to depend on you, really. If you take for example, I know plenty of law enforcement officers that went through the academy and they said, hey, my goal was to go through, pass the academy, not get hurt. That way I can get out, learn on the street to perform the function. That's one avenue. It's not the avenue I took. When I went through my first police academy, I tried to really emphasize leadership, and I was made the sergeant of the police academy. And then on my second police academy, I really wanted to do some self-focus and see how much I could grow and learn as a prior law enforcement officer going to a new department and another police academy. So then I really focused on my physical training, my educational training, like my academic, excuse me, and then as well as a few other components such as my scenario-based training and how I was going to engage with that. Now, through good guidance and good mentorship, I was able to honor grad the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, just one of a maybe a couple hundred that have ever done that in the world. And while I'm very proud of that fact, I also know that I wasn't able to achieve it alone. Like I said, I had some good mentorship and guidance going through, but I still had to put in the work. And when it came to the law enforcement procedure, I had been a law enforcement officer prior for a short time. It was still a different dynamic, right? It was a new academy, it was a new department, and I had to really emphasize on studying. So to give you some concept, to honor grad FLETC, you need to have academically, you need to have a 95% or above average. Well, on my first test in FLETC, I scored an 88. And that was, I went in saying I wanted to honor grad. I wanted to shoot for this high level, this prestigious award, so to say, to see am I capable of testing myself and pushing myself to that limit on every level, physical, academics, practical scenarios, every aspect that's graded. So I go in and I get an 88 on my first test, and I think, man, there's the chances of me honor grading right out the door. And I did some math and I sat down, looked down, and said, well, I kind of understand how the test goes. So I kind of use that first test to figure out the test and to figure out the police procedures and how they ran it. So an 88, not ideal, not what I was looking for, not a bad score, but not what I was looking for. I was looking for 95 or higher. And I go in and I get an 88 on that, which means I needed to get 100 on the next test, right, in order to stay in the running. The problem with that, it was the legal section, right? The legal section of law enforcement. And it was the hardest test that FLETC had at the time. Probably still is the hardest one at this point in time. Anyway, it had the biggest attrition rate. So the most people failed out on this test coming up. And I needed to score a perfect 100 on it. I didn't change any of my study habits. And my study habits were this, and you can apply this to your police officer written exam to get into law enforcement, and you can apply this to the academy too. I didn't change any of my physical study habits. So what do I mean is I was still studying, 20, 30 minutes a day. And then on the weekends, I was studying a combined time of 1 hour, right? So whether I did 1 hour on Saturday or 1 hour on Sunday, or maybe a half hour on Saturday and a half hour on Sunday. Now, a lot of times I would run over and I wind up getting 2 hours on a Saturday and a Sunday combined just because I wanted to go through an entire book again. But I didn't change any of that. It was pretty much 20, 30 minutes, usually 30 minutes every night after. So I'd go do the academy, come home, or go back to my dorm, so to say, for FLETC, and then I'd go hit the gym out in town, come back, eat dinner, go sit down, study for a bit, and then shower and call it a night and get ready for the prep all my gear for the next day of the academy. That was what my day in and day out looked like for months. Now, as I said, my study habit didn't change though. So when I came back, all I did was I changed what I was studying, right? I saw how the first test was. I saw how they asked questions and I analyzed that and I readapted my approach to my studying. So still kept the same amount of time, still studied at the same time. Everything was the same. Matter of fact, here was my routine. Monday, Wednesday, Friday was lifting. Tuesday, Thursdays were 3 or 4 mile runs. That was it for my own personal studying and working out for the academy. It was not a lot of extra work. It was just consistency that allowed me to be successful. I didn't say, oh, I'm going to just take today off. And then I take that day off and then I lose that rhythm or that momentum and I'm just going to take another. No, I refused to let that happen. So I stayed consistent for months on months here. And as I'm going through, I'm keeping that study habit of 20, 30 minutes a night. But then I start underlining and highlighting different aspects or different information. I start really applying what I'm reading during the week to what I'm looking at or listening to during the lecture in the academic lecture section. And I realized that those two things were the aspects of academia. Those were the aspects that were going to be on the test. So that's what I need to focus on. The scenario was an application of what I learned in there, plus what my instructors on the scenarios would teach you there on the spot. So I was able to learn to kind of forego what I was getting taught in the scenarios. And when I say getting taught, I mean, I was able to forego that was not what was going to be on the academic portion of the test. Learning police operations and procedures, learning legal, learning all the different dynamics and all the different tests, different aspects that would be on that test. And you can apply this to any test. As I said, this could be during your police academy or this could be during your hiring process. And that's what I focused on, right? So I focused on what I realized from the first test. And then the second test, I wound up getting 100 on it. And then test number 3, there's 4 major tests when I went through FLETC. So test number 3 was, I think I wound up getting a 96 or 97 on that one. So I was there. I was in the running. And I remember that I had to get a 98 on the last test, which really meant I could get 1 wrong. And I wound up getting 100 on the last test, which winded up getting my average over a 95. However, it worked out. I don't have the numbers in front of me anymore. It's been so long. But ultimately, it worked out all because I stayed with the physical setup, the time commitment and the committed effort. And I just readapted my focus. And I see this a lot for people going through the academy that are super nervous about the test, is they'll try to cram and cram and cram. And by the time you do that, you're missing out on everything you're hearing in the lectures that correlates with everything you're studying at home, right? So you hear the lecture, then you go back, you read it. And then when you go to the next lecture, they're going to reference stuff from the previous lecture and from the previous workbook that you did or study guide that you had. Now, while everyone I knew, was saying, hey, we're all going to work together. We're going to collaborate. We're all going to build study guides and pass them out. And we did that. And I studied that on the first test. And I studied that and I studied my actual workbooks from FLETC. The problem with that is I was listening to what other people thought was pertinent information and not using what I put together based on the lecture and my own studying to succeed. So why is this all important? Well, because understand certain departments when you go through in order to, start the academy, you need to learn maybe some 10 codes or 400 codes or whatever they call them when it comes to knowing the specific to that department if they have their own police academy. Other departments expect you to come in and have some type of understanding of, I guess, discipline, so to say. You come in and say, hey, you're gonna listen to this. This is what you're gonna do. You don't have a choice, otherwise you can just leave the academy, right? Understand you can prep for all of this, even the written exam. Let's say if you're out in California and you got to do the Pellet B or you're up in Illinois and you got to do the NTN, or you're down in Florida and you got to do the CJ BAT, or any other organized, I shouldn't say organized, any other standardized, there we go, standardized test out there for law enforcement, any post exam, any civil service exam, anything out there that you have to take, understand you can prep for it with very, very little effort and then score exceptionally well on it. And when I say little effort, 20 to 30 minutes a night is very little effort. Matter of fact, all my coaching members, when they're prepping for the exam, I tell them, because I'm assuming they have lives and families and the world and work to do and deal with, I say, hey, pick 20 to 30 minutes 3 times a week. So that could be a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That could be a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Doesn't matter. And then try to squeeze in, another hour during the weekend where you're trying to get 30 minutes on a Saturday and 30 minutes on a Sunday. And if you miss a little bit, that's okay. But try to get those 3 main half-hour, 20-minute segments during the week. And you will do exceptionally well on the test, especially if you do a practice exam. Go back, grade it, see where you fall on it. See, okay, hey, I've gotten 2 wrong in this area, or I've gotten 3 wrong in this area. That's leading me to think maybe I need to emphasize or focus my studying habits on maybe writing or reading comprehension or vocabulary. Those are the areas I'm getting questions wrong. Or maybe you go through it and you only get 1 question wrong in each, and then you have to go back and analyze the question a little bit further. Is this question, do these questions correlate, right? Do these questions have a vocabulary term that I didn't understand? And maybe it's vocabulary. Do these questions have some type of segment that written segment that I quite wasn't familiar with, or some type of reading rule that I wasn't familiar with? If that's the case, then you can isolate it down. But in the meantime, you could just take another practice test and see where you fall on that aspect. That's why I tell everyone, or even anyone in the community for coaching, hey, take a bunch of different practice exams. It doesn't matter if they're not for that department. Just most written exams have 3 underlying components: reading comprehension, writing, and vocabulary, and see where you fall on that. Some have additional segments like the Pellet B, the NTN, but focus on those 3 to start and see where you fall to see, hey, is this going to be an issue? Then you can start doing all the isolated work for those special segments. And that's just studying and studying. But a lot to consider here, right? I'm hitting you all with a lot because getting into the academy is still a condition of remaining employed, right? So you get through this arduous and rigorous hiring process to make it to the academy, only to struggle academically, which hurts you in other aspects. That's not what I want for you, and you don't have to. That doesn't have to be your situation. So I hope this helps. Listen, those gifts are still down in description. 1's the Getting Started workshop. 2 is the free coaching call with myself or any other instructor. And then number 3, test out that new exam. See where you fall as a candidate if you're getting ready to apply for law enforcement. And then go from there. And as I said, if there's anything we can help with, just reach out. Talk to you soon. Stay safe.